Hello, everyone. We are here on this Rebel Labs interview with a virtual JAX speaker and a Java champion and an extremely nice person, Andres Almiray. So, Andres, hi.
Hello, everybody.
You just finished giving a session about Gradle and if it's a new hot tool or not so awesome tool for the virtual JAX. How was your experience? How did you like that?
Well, to be honest, I was nervous, and we kept switching on and off within the terminal and the screen, and it was interesting experience. But I hope that the audience got a kick out of the information that was presented, and we got questions asked as we went by at the end, and I think that the people got really into the matter.
Oh, it was a great session. I was watching live, obviously, on the same Hangout as you, and I can assure you that this was really educational and it's really interesting. So you are your Twitter information, and you go by A. Almiray on Twitter, says that you are Groovy aficionado, Griffon project lead, JSR 377 spec lead, which might be a little bit critic for less community-oriented and involved Java users, and a Java champion, obviously. So maybe you can explain that spec lead role a little bit, just really quickly, so we can learn about you just a bit more.
Right. So people that know me know that I'm very fond of writing applications. I really like the Swing API, and for a while I was against JavaFX, and now I think that I'm warming up into really using JavaFX in Angular. This means that I keep finding ways to write desktop applications, and one of the ways that I like to do so is using the Griffon framework, which I am the project lead and one of the project members. And as time passed by, when I was continued to develop the Griffon framework, I noticed that there were some other frameworks out there that do or perform the same features over and over again. And I believe now it's time to try to standardize how these different frameworks work so that it will be easier to understand how they work. And if you need to eventually migrate from one to another, it will be easier. So we already have this in the server space. We got Java EE. For people that really get into working with Java EE, they know that the different JSRs around the Java EE platform make life much easier. So this is kind of the same thing that we would like to do with JSR 377. Create a set of standard APIs for people to be able to develop desktop applications. But with the recent bust of the Internet of Things, it is also possible to run Java on embedded devices. And create an application for these devices would be almost in the same way as you would do with desktop applications. Why? Because the UI toolkit of choice for these devices is JavaFX. So JSR 377 also targets the embedded space.
Great. It's an amazing project. I hope that it will succeed majorly in the next couple of time units. Some time units that are appropriate for developing JSR, and that everyone will know about that. So let's quickly go into the Blitz section of this interview, where we ask you a predefined set of questions, and we want to hear your answers, which you don't have to support that much. So what do you think? Is computer science a real science?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Is software engineering a real engineering?
It should be.
It should be. If there would be no estimates, it would be a real engineering. I like that. So what do you like more, static or dynamic typing in programming languages?
Definitely dynamic.
What's your favorite JVM language? I think that's easy for you.
Yeah, Groovy.
What is your favorite open source project?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I have to say, just because of how important it is for the other projects that I mainly use, it should be Groovy.
Okay, like since you gave the same answer to two questions now, what's your least favorite open source project?
Least favorite open source project?
Yeah, that's a joke question. You don't have to answer it. Let's talk about your setup. What do you have one? Come on, give it. What is your least favorite open source project?
Well, it's open source, but it's okay. No, it's okay.
Yeah, it's a really dangerous area where we probably don't want to turn this conversation to. So what is your setup? What do you use, Mac or PC?
I use a Mac.
Okay, and what is the IDE of your choice?
My IDE of choice after trying all the major ones is still IDEA.
Yeah, it's a pretty common answer. So the last question in this section is a little bit more explanatory, so you can explain if you want. What is the worst habit a programmer can have? So how to be the worst software developer that you can imagine?
The worst habit?
Yeah.
I guess copy and then pasting code from Stack Overflow without thinking twice.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a bad habit. So if you're listening to us, or if you're watching this interview, or if you joined us on the Virtual Jack podcast, so no, never put the code and commit the code directly copied from Stack Overflow. That's great. So I'm out of the short questions. So let's talk about the session that you just gave. So Gradle is a build tool based on the Groovy DSL, which allows you to specify much more conveniently the build execution of the build for your project. So do you really think that people should move and adopt Gradle in their existing projects, or should we maybe consider starting greenfield projects with Gradle, or is it something that will so there is a competition between build tools, obviously. So will Gradle win in the foreseeable future, or will this linger with us for years and years to come?
I really hope that it becomes the major player and that it will eventually overturn Maven in terms of numbers and adoption. Definitely should be an adoption for greenfield projects. For legacy projects that you know for a fact you always get in trouble getting the artifacts right, I would recommend running a proof of concept to migrate to Gradle. For projects that you use every single day, you already have it working in the second release or third release on some maintenance mode, but are fairly recent, I would say that unless you really have a lot of pain in your build, stay with Maven. There's no point in migrating. But if you're starting to encounter a lot of pain, then definitely consider alternatives. And for all the alternatives that you can find out there, I believe that Gradle is the one that is better suited today to fulfill all your needs.
That is probably a very comprehensive answer. Indeed, moving prematurely to other build tool is probably not a priority if you are not in a lot of pain.
Yeah, so, if it works for you, if it's not broken, why fix it, right? Yep. If maybe it's working correctly for you, if it's not taking too much time out your development experience, then by all means keep going with it.
So another thing that I noticed from the session is that there are many other tools or platforms or technologies that kind of play with Gradle really well. So you showed us Lazybones project archetype generator, and there is, well, Gradle Wrapper is kind of Gradle, but you mentioned Beantray a couple of times, which is a binary distribution platform and works great with open source. You mentioned Travis CI and Circle CI a couple of times. So what would be the stack of your choice for the project build and distribution and continuous integration, maybe? So say I have a small, let's say, open source project, so we'll not go into the proprietary like container territory. So how would you maybe describe an architecture of the build of such project really like quickly, just maybe major points to start looking into?
So I can use a concrete example, the ASCII Doctor Gradle plugin, which seems to be very popular in the ASCII Doctor community. The code is hosted on GitHub so that we can have contributions from everybody, and we actually have lots of contributions coming from Hackathon. The issues, we manage them directly with GitHub issues, but we could use another cloud tool called Waffle.io, which is kind of like an agile board for managing your issues. We are not using it just because I'm lazy to set up. It's quite easy if you use GitHub. I'm just really lazy for that. We have historical records of code coverage using another online service called Coveralls.io, which there is a Gradle plugin that allows you to push the coverage results when you build in a CI environment directly to Coveralls.io. The CI environment that we chose is Travis because it has that simple integration with GitHub. There are other services as well, but we just went with Travis because it's the easiest one to integrate with. And finally, we use, again, GitHub Pages to publish any documentation that we need.
Okay, that's a great setup for maybe a smaller project that involves a couple of people on a team, and that is open source. Yeah, I think it's a great setup. So for those of you who don't know, ASCII Doctor is maybe you can tell us a couple of words about ASCII Doctor.
So ASCII Doctor is a member of the microformat family. So kind of like Markdown, which you typically use Markdown to write README files on GitHub. But ASCII Doctor has much more syntax, but that doesn't mean it's bloated. So when you want to write a simple document with Markdown, you eventually find that in order to build tables or some very specific HTML elements, you have to input HTML tags. There is no way. Why? Because Markdown is very simple. Another thing that you find when writing Markdown documents is that there's no support for multi-page documentation or to have links from one document to the other. You need additional tools in order to make this multi-page documentation. Finally, when you write Markdown, you can only transform as is, plain, without additional tools again, into HTML. With ASCII Doctor, you have syntax that is fully compatible with most of the HTML tags, so there is no need to break down into writing a specific HTML content, and you can target different output formats, not just HTML or HTML5. You can output to PDF or EPUB or DocBook, and if you go into DocBook, then you have additional pipeline to publish into anything you want to. ASCII Doctor, I believe, is quickly becoming the preferred format for many open source projects. For just a token, many of the JBoss related projects already switched from whatever version they use to ASCII Doc. The Spring Manual, which is quite big, switched from DocBook to ASCII Doctor more than a year ago. And ASCII Doc is now one of the native documentation formats that you can find in GitHub and also on Bintray. So either if you like Markdown or if you like ASCII Doc, then you can use them on GitHub and Bintray.
That's awesome. I didn't know that bit about GitHub or Bintray, so that makes integrations much easier, and you can just basically publish your docs in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, speaking of publishing, again, going back to Gradle, there's a plugin called Gradle Git and GitHub Pages. I have examples of projects that you can create your documentation on the command line and automatically push that documentation into the GitHub Pages branch with just one command line.
That seems like a great little script.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do that with Maven. Probably not. I have to script that. So going back to Groovy, so recently Groovy moved from under the support of Pivotal, and I think they joined the Apache Foundation.
That's right.
So do you think this is a change for good? Obviously, this is a change, and some things will be done differently now. But can you comment on how do you feel? Because you're very passionate about Groovy. So do you think it's a step forward, or will it be one of the Apache project that, well, it won't get abandoned, but Apache Foundation doesn't have the best frame for supporting all of the projects?
Right. So that is a really interesting question, and we were very grateful with Pivotal for their support and Spring Source before that. But the Groovy community is strong enough to stand on its own, and the advantage of joining the Apache Foundation is that there's going to be a clear line of legal implications. So all the licenses and the support, the legal support that the Apache Foundation can give will be given to the community. But also on the other side, we keep receiving contributions from people that are not Apache committers, because we still have a mirror on our GitHub repository. So there will be a few changes. So how we do releases will be different. We have to follow all the bylaws of the Apache Foundation and the process and whatnot. But taking in from the information and contributions from the community will continue to happen as it was before.
That's a great reassuring. Yeah. So I hope Groovy will have a bright future, and I love the language. The last question, really quick, because I totally forgot to ask that at the session. So there are for different languages, there are different build tools. Like, so Scala has SBT, the Clojure has Leiningen, and now Boot, something called Boot. What do you think is the most innovative build tool, or just if you want something exotic and really bleeding edge of the build tools, where should I look? Is it still Gradle, or do you know some project that runs forward and Gradle takes inspiration from?
I don't exactly know the answer for this. In terms of the Java space, I don't believe we have a build tool that is recent than Gradle. We used to have Raven, which was kind of like a mix of Rake and Maven. We had Builder, which was also based on Ruby. And some people also ran Rake directly with JRuby. Then came SVT and Leiningen. And I think that Jason Bansil is working on a new version of Maven. It has a different name, but it's based on the ideas of Maven. And he's also copying some ideas from Gradle. As a matter of fact, there's kind of a feedback loop within the two projects, so that is great. It's not just an echo chamber on each one of them. But if there is, and there's bound to be, I am not aware of a project that tries to kick Gradle out of the upstart status and say, yes, we're better than these guys, and we're going to take over the world, and we're going to take over Maven. If it's there, I haven't listened about it.
I haven't heard of anything like that either. So Gradle is awesome. This was a really inspiring session. I thank you a lot. Andres Almiray with us. So everybody who listens, go and follow him on Twitter. He's an active Twitter user. And you can post any further questions about Gradle or Groovy or the Griffon project, or how to run IoT clusters of fridges and microwaves to Andres. Thanks a lot. I'm really excited to see you really soon in Estonia for the Geek Out conference. And that wraps up our interview here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
See you next time on another session.
Definitely. Thank you for having me again.